One. Welcome back to the podcast, you sexy human being. And thank you for joining me today with another sexy human being who's joined me, Peter Flynn. He has got the best introduction I've ever had for a podcast. He is addicted to caffeine. He enjoys a good chat and he can juggle at a third grade level. But this man does have a lot of value. I've heard great reviews and great feedback about this man. And we're going to dig into his story, chat business, chat mindset, chat wealth today. Peter, thanks for joining me today, my man. Oh, you're on mute, my man. Let's kick that mute button off. There we go.
That's a good start. Also, second grade level with the mute button, apparently.
Beautiful, mate.
These things happen. Thank you for having me, mate.
Mate, let's have a chat. Look, I actually kick this off. I normally keep it secret before I ask it. So, mate, how are you personally out of 10 and professionally out of 10 and why? And you can't use the number 7.
Just before I jump into that, I say that with everyone. I say you can't pick 7. 7's a cop-out.
Yes.
So, I like it. Professionally, I'm gonna say probably 9.34 at the moment. And beautiful. The reason I chose that number is things are moving in the right direction for the different businesses, different companies that we have. Feeling super inspired. I've had a really good few months, and what's coming up is really big as well. Some things, unfortunately, I can't share just yet on the podcast. But there are some very exciting things coming, so I'm feeling pumped about that. And personally, I'm actually going to say 9.1. But if you asked me about a month ago, I actually split up with my long-term partner about 5-6 weeks ago now. That would have been a lot lower, but there's been a lot of, I guess, grief, growing, healing over the past 4 to 6 weeks now. And in a really good spot. So to be, 100% open and honest, that, a month ago it was terrible. So now it's actually doing really well. So
that's beautiful, man. Well, I look forward to even your choice of words then is really awesome. There's a level of consciousness to you. There's a lot of growth to you. Obviously mindset, business and wealth to you. So before we sort of dive into the juicy stuff, what's your story, mate? How have you been able to become the man that you are, have the success that you've have so far? Yeah. Who's Peter Flynn?
Peter Flynn. He's an interesting cat, I would say. So my journey started back in, if I pull us back to the start, I was never so many entrepreneurs and business owners are like, when I was 4 years old, I was selling this. And when I was 6 years old, I was selling this. And then by the time I was 8 years old, I had 4, that wasn't me at all. I never really thought about owning a business until I owned a business. I kind of fell into it. And I wonder how many people are truthfully honest when they tell that story. I feel like so many people kind of fall into it because they just don't see a better way, or they feel like they can do it better than someone else that they're working with. So my journey started, I did civil engineering to start with at university. And I actually picked civil engineering because my parents said, you've got to go to uni. And I was like, all right, what do I value at this stage? Not spending money because we didn't have much money, and friends, because I didn't have heaps of friends either. So one of my friends was doing civil engineering and it was at the Mawson Lakes campus, and parking there was 10 cents an hour. So those were the 2 reasons why I chose to do that degree. Zero interested in it at all. I actually didn't attend anything and failed. And then I realized that I had to pay the HEX fee on that, or help debt as it's called these days, which was a bit of a stitch up. So I dropped out and I worked as a laborer for, call it 6 months. And then my mum said, well, if you don't go back to uni, you're going to have to start paying rent or board at home. And I was like, shit. All right, well, I've got to go back to uni then. So I was talking to a few of my friends, and one of them, she said, you should do human movement, which is exercise science, because, again, some fantastic reasons for picking a uni degree. There's lots of hot girls and there's great pub crawls. And so I picked human movement for that reason. And in the first year, I was probably top 5 students at pub crawls, but I was probably bottom 5 when it came to actual results in the classroom. And for those listening from Adelaide, flashies on a Wednesday night, we would go to flashies at HQ on a Wednesday night and then roll straight into a lecture on a Thursday morning. And it was an impressive feat of human performance, you could say. Then at the start of the second year, I was playing indoor soccer, and this was just before we started. It was in February, start of the second year of uni, and I was going for a volley, and I collided legs with someone just like that, and I heard this massive crack. And I hit the ball, by the way, and I got a yellow card, which was a stitch up. But I heard this massive crack, and I stepped back, and as I was stepping back, I was like, oh damn, I've broke this dude's leg. It was so loud. I was for sure it's broken. And then as I stepped back on my right leg, I was like, oh, that's my leg. That's definitely my leg that's broken. So it fell to the floor. We actually ended up winning the game 1-0. So that was a win in itself. But I had to spend 3.5 months in a cast, so full leg cast, a half leg cast, and then I actually had to learn to walk again in a pool. And I was a relatively high level tennis player, so I had to relearn to walk. I worked with a physio. I was in a pool with a bunch of like 80-year-olds who just had like hip replacements and knee replacements, and it was super depressing going from like elite sort of tennis down to learning to walk again. And I had a physio at the time who gave me so much hope physically and mentally. And I was like, this feeling that he gave me, I want to give this to other people one day. I was like, this is the coolest job on the fucking earth. This is amazing. How he took me from being here to being up here, and just the way he made me feel, I was like, I want to do that for other people one day. And so that was really where my journey began. So from there, I was a reasonably smart person. I got a reasonably photographic memory, you could say. It hurt people that I could just read the lectures and then finish the exam in about 40 minutes and walk out. So I became one of the top students because I found out if I was one of the top students in human movement, I could then do a master's in physio on top of that. They took the top 19 students who applied for masters. So I finished in the top 19. I did my master's in physio and I became a physiotherapist. I went over to Europe, played tennis over there for about a year, came back and I worked for 6 weeks as a physiotherapist. And I was like, oh, this is really shit. I reckon I can do this better. Really arrogant idiot at the time. And this was June 2015. And then 1st of July 2015, I started my first ever business, which was a physio clinic. But to call it a clinic is a bit of a stretch, you could say. So it was a one room in a CrossFit gym, which was on an industrial street next to a power plant and a scrap metal yard. And wasn't the loveliest place you've ever seen. It was about 20 meters back from the road. We did call it Rape Alley because there were no lights in there and it felt genuinely unsafe walking down that, even in daylight at times. And the amount of people that would literally get there and they would call me and they'd be like, hey, Pete, I think I'm in the wrong spot. And I'm like, all right, does it look really creepy? You can see like no lights, but maybe a bit of scrap metal and a what was that? And a power plant. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, right place. Just go straight through the door and you'll see me there. So that's where it all began. I had a business partner. We sort of joined after 4 months. His name was Andrew, amazing bloke. And we grew that to a very, very large team and 2 large multidisciplinary clinics in Adelaide. You know, we had physiotherapy, massage, podiatry, dietetics, sports doctor, orthopedic surgeon. And I ended up exiting that business and selling it in December last year, which was a good progression for me to move on from that. In 2018, joined the business consulting team at Clinic Mastery and part owner in that business now as well. And that's going from strength to strength. That's the main thing that I do. I had iMoveU, which was a business of ours, which was training physiotherapists. And we actually got acquired by a large international company earlier this year in that business too. I do keynote speaking and speaking at different events, which is always fun to get to talk about business. It seems ridiculous that people will actually pay you to come and talk about the things that you love to talk about in your spare time. But it's fantastic to be able to come and talk about business and entrepreneurship and mindset and marketing and different things depending on what people are after. And that's given me the opportunity to travel a lot for my work. And then on the side as well, I've got some people who have online businesses who I just help mentor them and work with them to grow their online businesses, essentially just to create the lives of their dreams. And that's a lot of what we do across all of my businesses is help business owners to go from most business owners start a business because they want to work less and make more, and then they end up working more and making less and really hating what they do and losing the passion for it. So it's how do we help to streamline, help to give them the systems, the processes, the mindset, and the ability to create the life of their dreams. And I don't think it's complex. I don't think it's super hard, but I think it's consistency and it's the basics done to a level of mastery. So that, my friend, is my story.
Beautiful story, mate. The pub crawls. What was the highlight there, mate? How'd you get top 5 in the pub crawls?
Honestly, I can't remember, but I would hear about my escapades the next day,
Yeah.
and I can never ever drink Bacardi again, ever. Like even looking at the bottle without even smelling it, I feel genuinely sick.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, mate. Look, we'll dive into some more some topics I think you'd love to expand on. Business, wealth, mindset. They're obviously three big pillars. Obviously, they
Yeah.
all link into each other as well. I'd like to know from you what were some of the bigger lessons you had with just even building your first business, the physiotherapy business. I've come from bricks and mortar gyms, so
Mm.
similarities to some degree. And I'm not sure about you, mate, but when I first started business, I was like, it's that they call it the uninformed optimist, where it's like, fuck yeah, this is gonna be sick, and then it's like it'll be easy, and then it's like you get 6 months and you think you're gonna make $1 million in 12 months, and then you're 6 months into it, you're negative 40 grand, and you don't know how you're going to keep going. And like that was my experience, anyways, to some degree. What was it like for you to get? Because once you've done the first one, you've learned the skills, you got through sort of the valley of despair, and you've learned the lessons, the systems, the tools, the processes, the mindset. Then the second one, the third one, the fourth one, it just gets easier and easier, and you've got more resources too. What was it like doing the first one? What was like the challenge you went through, the breakthroughs you went through, the problems that you had to solve for you to get to a point where you're able to exit and sell it and do quite well?
It's interesting. I think for me, I enjoyed that more so than running the large company. From the excitement and enjoyment perspective, like I enjoy the running large company from the other parts that come with it. The material parts of that are obviously very nice. Um, but I think in the early days, it was really nice to be able to move fast and make changes at lightning speed. When you've got a team of 20, 30, 40 people to make changes, it has to happen relatively slowly because you have to be able to look at what's the impact, the second, the third, the fourth order consequences of the decisions that we make. And a lot of people that work in a business, they're a bit averse to change. And when there's a lot of change, that stresses them out a lot. So when the business is early and you've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 team members and you're making changes fast and you're evolving and you're growing, I think that was super exciting. So I loved the first 3 years. My fondest memories in business are when we were putting together IKEA flat packs at 1:30 in the morning, getting Domino's pizza delivered with Pepsi Max and just getting it done and just being there and hustling and working those 16-hour days. I used to get up and work at the UniSA gym. I'd leave home at 4:30 in the morning. I'd work at the UniSA gym until about 11 a.m. Then I'd go do my own gym session. Then I'd go work as a physio from about 12:30 till 10, 11 p.m. at night. I did that Monday to Friday. All day Saturday, I worked at a footy club. Half a day Sunday, I worked at a soccer club. And I love that. I look back really fondly. Would I want to do that again right now? Probably not. But at the time, like I was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And I think if you love the process, then it becomes really easy. And I really loved it. I really loved doing those things at the time. And that's what made it so easy to be successful. It didn't feel hard. It didn't feel like a struggle. Like we were always very positive cash flow. And healthcare is one of those businesses where it's quite recession proof, but also typically people are paying, on the day. So it's quite a cash flow positive business. And when you're the main or one of the main revenue generators, your profit margins are quite high as well. Compare that to an established healthcare business, which has higher profits but much lower profit margins. So then you're looking at 10 to 15% being a good profit margin. And then you have a couple of spanners thrown in like COVID and a few things like that, and it can really derail a business for a couple of years. So
How did you handle COVID? What was the impact you guys had on COVID? Were you essential, so you guys stayed open? What was it like for you guys?
we were in Adelaide. So my healthcare businesses were in Adelaide, and Adelaide had the famous week of lockdown
Yeah.
From the pizza delivery guy.
Yeah.
And then I think we had another like 5 days of lockdown as well. So all in all, I think we had it the worst. I think Melbourne had a few weeks of lockdown as well, and maybe Sydney. But I think we can all agree Adelaide probably had it the toughest. But I would say for us it wasn't the hardest time because JobKeeper gave us a foundation, but we were open, but we weren't technically like essential. Like we were sort of in the in between category. So it was just an interesting time. It was probably the effect on the team and the isolation and the challenges that the team had in supporting the team so that they could show up at work and be their best selves. I think that was the biggest challenge. And we had quite a large team at that stage, mid 20s to 30 people. And so there's a lot of people to be supporting who are struggling with their own things that are going on in their life. And if they're struggling personally, then professionally, they're also struggling too. And so there's a knock-on effect on the business itself.
How do you look after yourself, mate? Just something you just mentioned then, that if you're struggling personally, it's going to show up professionally. And that's, I've done a couple of presentations for companies literally teaching that exact topic, like look after yourself personally and the business will take care of itself. So what do you do from a personal aspect? And even if we obviously probably early days when you're smashing the pizzas and living off Pepsi Max, and I heavily relate to that. We had to like paint the gyms. We had this story where like our landlord, we moved in and we didn't do our due diligence because the other landlord was not good. Anyways, we moved, and then like the night we moved in and we were at a gym, we obviously cranked music. That night we realized someone was living next door legally with a caretaker's permit. And then we had 2 months to get out of there. So we had to like paint the morning of, move the gym overnight. It was fucking mess. But the question of that, what's the mindset for you back then and even now that's allowed you to one, take action? Because I think that's something that I think some people even hearing your story, it's like, fuck, he just did it. He just did it. Like it seems like nothing. But even for me, if I didn't have my mentor at the time and that influence of me, because I'm more of that sort of, I used to be very like anxious, fearful. What if it fucks up? What if it doesn't work? And all those sort of limiting beliefs, rather than like, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'd love to know your mindset around one, taking action, but two, staying consistent. Because I find they're two of the sort of the limitations for a lot of people with their businesses, either getting started or obviously staying consistent to see the fruits of it and not having sort of shiny object happening. So what was going through your head back then and what goes through your head now to give you the success in your business?
It's an interesting question. I think from a taking action perspective, for me, I plan. So I plan things out. And the question I ask myself on a consistent basis is, what would Pete in 10 years wish I did right now? Like that's the way I like to think of it, because then I'm projecting myself forwards and I'm thinking back. Because I guarantee if everyone right now goes, all right, what do I wish I did 10 years ago? There's probably a few things that they're like, with the bias of hindsight, the advantage, you'd probably go, all right, well, I would have bought a couple more properties and I would have done this and I would have done that. And I wouldn't have bought that stupid thing and I wouldn't have made that silly decision at the time. So a lot of people would change what they did. But if you ask someone to make a long-term decision without thinking forwards, it's very hard to do. So I often, like when I'm doing my planning quarterly and yearly, I'm thinking in 10 years time, what would I wish I worked on right now? And so often things that come up is I wish I was more consistent. So I'm looking at what can I do consistently. And I'm looking at also health and fitness and things like that we often take for granted now when we're not sick, but that creates disease and sickness in the future. And then taking action as well. Like a lot of people, like, I just wish I started that thing 10 years ago. If I started that 10 years ago and was consistent, I'd be a millionaire. I'd be living the life I want right now. So for me, like, those are the things I think about. And then I break that down. So if I want to be somewhere in 10 years time, where do I need to be in 3 years? And if I'm going to be there in 3 years, where do I need to be in 1 year? And so on, what do I need to be in 3 months? And what do I need to do this week? And so I think when people create a plan, sometimes they try and put a different thing every week and they're doing all these things. But if you look at the plan that I have for myself, it's doing the same things over and over and over again consistently that seem really basic. Like for me, like really important things that I work on to the nth degree is my email marketing. Like, how can I connect with people 1% better every single week? How can I connect with people through my messaging, through my ads 1% better every week? Like, it's little things like that. It's how can I ask better questions? Very seldom am I moving away from those things. It's how can I have a better understanding of investment, or even, what's the government's plans over the next 5-10 years? What's in their best interest, and how can I align my financial investments with the government's best interest? Because people typically act in line with their best interests, right? And politicians, surprisingly, are no different. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that goes through my head when I'm thinking of actions and consistency. Probably the same thing. It's in 10 years' time. What do I wish I did right now? What do I wish I was working on right now? And then I plan it into my diary. And when I block it into my diary, so let's say I put something in my diary, I treat it like an appointment with someone. what I found when I was a business owner to start with is I didn't respect my own time. I would time block my diary, it would look great, and then I wouldn't fucking do any of it. I'd do all this other shit. But what I found is if I had an appointment with someone, I'd be there on time. I gave them my full attention. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not going to make a coffee. I'm not looking in the mirror. I'm not flexing. I'm not doing any of that silly shit, right? But I was
After it
doing
though, right? After you finish though, of course.
You say ask me to flex, then maybe no, sorry. But so now I treat my diary time blocks like it's an appointment with someone, and so I give my time the same respect that I give other people's time, and that for me was a big switch.
That's awesome. And I actually relate to that, to be vulnerable with you. Like, I've had this call with you on my calendar. I'm here ready, but sometimes like, oh, I've got booked in, build a funnel, or I'll take a couple minutes to get there. I'll take my time to get there rather. I'm going to be here sharp. So man, that's a little shit for me. So I really appreciate that. I'd like to know a little bit, if we can zoom in on a couple of those. Planning, I'm a huge planner. I post my daily huddles. I did
I like that, by the way. Yeah.
Really awesome. So I do pretty much what you're saying, but I'd love to know your thoughts on this, but also the next step of it is I do purpose. What's your purpose? What lights you up? What's your gift to give? What's your mission? What are you doing the next 5 to 10 years? Then we go 3 years, 2 years, 12 months, quarter, month, week, and day, which is those daily huddles that you see me post. But my question to you is, how do you do your planning? Is there any sort of variance on what I just said, or any tips you'd even give me or people listening? And then the next step, which I think you've got a fair bit of value to add here, is whenever I'm working with a client, it's what's your purpose, what's your vision, but then and have a plan to get there. But you also need a vehicle to get you there too. Like if we're in Australia, we're on the Gold Coast. If we want to go to New Zealand, a car's not going to get us there, right? Well, maybe. Oh, depends what car.
Not effectively.
Not effectively, right? So ideally, you got a plane. Ideally, you got a jet. Like you got something to get you there. And like people want a life of financial freedom. Working at Coles or Macca's, with no disrespect, is probably not going to get you there, right? So for someone who's got really good experience with business and online businesses, email marketing, you've run successful businesses, what's your thoughts on, firstly, the planning? Any tips on top of what I've just said? And then how would you help someone who's listening to this be like, fuck, I want to have a great life, but I don't know how the fuck to get there. What business model should I start? What business should I start? What advice would you give this person?
I think for me, I really like John DeMartini's purpose process, which I also did through a guy called Lewis Mocker too, which I found very, very interesting, just from the perspective of just outlining what are the things in your life that you value, and understanding how they show up in your life. And then what are the things that you say you value but you don't value because it doesn't show up in your life that way. Like a lot of people say that they value wealth building, but if you look at the evidence in their life, they probably value status, a lot of people, over wealth building, because where they put their money is not into things that appreciate, it's into things that depreciate, but are there for status. And it's the whole status versus wealth game too, which we could go into that for hours on end. But I think for me, I try and find out what is this person's values, like what do they say their values are, and then let's actually dive deep into what do they value, where do they spend their time, what do they talk about, where do they spend their money. That's an interesting one for me, because I find there's often a lack of congruency. And so for someone who says they want to build vast amounts of wealth and have financial freedom, but nothing that they do right now is really in line with that. Let's say they earn $20,000 a month, right? If you earn $20,000 a month and you don't value wealth building and you spend most of that, then earning $50,000 a month is not going to get you closer towards your goal. You will find a way to spend that. And I see that time and time again. And so I think that we have to think about how can we actually change that values system. Otherwise, it's actually really not going to change, and you're going to be in the same place, quite frustrated, just doing more and having more, but not being more and not achieving your goal. So from that perspective, that's one of the key things I'd add in from the sort of vision mission is like, what's your value set and how does it show up in your life, and are you not seeing something here?
Yeah, beautiful, man. And so get clear on your values, make sure they're congruent, make sure there's not sort of blockages in it. Like you say you want wealth, but there's a conflict. Your actions don't back that up. They've now got a plan. They've got clarity on what to do. What would you comment on, or your thoughts on, advice on, about them finding the right business model? What vehicle will allow them to fulfill their plan? Do you have any advice within that for someone who's maybe new to business, or maybe they're running a business? I've got a client at the moment. She's running a business, and it's like she kind of fell into it to some degree, but it's not, one, aligned with her, and two, it's not going to get her to where she wants to go. So like, it's reality of bite the bullet. It's time to change. So what would you say about selecting the right vehicle for people to fulfill their mission, their vision, their life plan?
I mean, the right vehicle is so important, right? Like I met a guy the other day who works in hospitality and he wants to be wealthy and he works twice as hard as I do. He works like 80, 90 hours a week. It's ridiculous, but he's in the wrong vehicle. He's never going to get there. If he were to take that same work ethic and invest in himself a little bit and find a business that has the opportunity to be more scalable and to help him to achieve his goals, be more profitable and add a lot of value, then he would be very successful. And so typically what I would look at if someone's going, what should I do? I don't know what I want to do. I'd look at, what are you good at to start with? Like, what are you actually good at? Or what can you be good at? Okay. You might not be good at it yet, but what do you think you could be good at? What is a problem people will pay to solve? Like, that's important. Like, businesses are about solving problems. The amount of times people try and create a business around a solution, but it's not a problem anyone wants solved. And then importantly, down the bottom, if we put another circle there, it's are people aware of this problem? And are they willing to pay money? And so when I sort of look at those together, then I can get a bit of an idea of, all right, are you good at it? Or can you be good at it? Are people aware of it? Will they pay money to have this problem solved? It's pretty like oversimplified a framework. And then you could go into more things like, what would the profit margins be on this? How scalable would it be? How much of your time would it take up? Is this something you could do for the next 10 years? Is this a business that will still be there in the next 10 years? Is it something that has like high likelihood of creative destruction? What's the barrier to entry? Is this something like that you can get into and you can start doing as a side hustle, or do you need to be full in and you need, $500,000 of investor funding to kick it off? There's a whole bunch of other questions we could put in there, but the oversimplified version was what we went through to start with.
Beautiful, man. And I love simplicity as well. So that's really awesome. Maybe just one more tangent on that. What is some examples of some vehicles like you mentioned? Or let me ask this. If you were to go back, start fresh, knowing what you know now and having the skill sets you have now, would you go back into the physio clinic, or would you go straight to an online business, a service-based business, and you don't have the resources? So pretend you're back to zero, got no cash, but you've got all of this here. What vehicle would you go with?
Brilliant. I was talking about this yesterday, actually. So timely, very timely.
Beautiful.
I'd probably look at something that has a really simple direct return on investment. So to either be a consulting business, like a business consulting business, or be a marketing agency. And marketing agency, I'd specifically be looking more into Google AdWords than anything else, because it's quite set and forget. Large businesses are happy to spend a lot of money on it. And genuinely, most people are getting ripped off blind.
Yeah.
They'll be getting charged, $700 to $1,000 a month for very, very, very minimal work on the back end there. So it's just that they don't understand it. So if you can teach yourself to be good at something that adds value and that people don't understand, you can charge appropriately for it. Whether or not you feel great about that, that's up to you. But it's an industry where you can make a lot of money. And then the other one's consulting, which is probably my favorite one to do, because I feel like you really do make a big impact in people's lives. So helping people to create their dream business. And I think John D. Martini, we were talking about, says, when you're good or amazing at helping people to get what they want at scale, you'll get what you want. And for me, I love helping business owners to create their dream business and to achieve their goals. And I know that if I help them to get that, then I'm going to be successful. And so I focus on the doing the thing, the helping them get that. And if they're successful, then I'm successful.
Perfect, man. Let's lean into that. So you just said you love helping business owners to be successful with their business, with their personal life. What is it that you do with a client? Say I come to you right now, and obviously it's varied to the individual and what their problems are, but say I come to you, I'm running a business, it's not that great, or it's struggling a little bit. I'm personally not in the best position. What are some of the things you go through with your clients, or what would you suggest to someone? Whether you mentioned values, probably there's be a business audit in there as well, but what would you do for someone to help them do exactly what you said to do from a sort of general consensus? Because it's obviously not an individual person. What would you say?
It's a sales call now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like
yeah.
it.
Sell me, sir.
Sorry. I mean, it depends on the specific problems, right? Like I would probably focus to start with like a business audit, like where are they? Because I really need to understand, and they need to understand the amount of business owners that have no idea where they are because when things aren't going well, they just go, can't see.
And
I don't want to see
tunnel
it.
vision.
I don't want to look at the numbers because I know they're shit.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at these things because I know it's not going well. So that happens a lot. So we really need to take the covers off and we need to have a really open, honest look at where are we right now. So that's the first thing is to
Beautiful.
sit down and just work out all the finances, all the numbers, just the org structure, like how does this business run? What are the systems that it runs on? And then we go, right, well, where do we want to be? Typically, for someone like that, I'm like, where do you want to be in 3 years' time? And then we'll pull it back to where are we going to be in 60 days' time? So if we got 2 months to start turning this ship around, where do you want to be in 60 days' time that you would feel like we're moving towards success? Now, 60 days is a relatively short time frame, but for a lot of people in that position, they really need to see something change. And so we're looking for a few quick wins, things that aren't necessarily always the best long-term decisions, but in order to allow them to get out of the scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset to be able to make long-term decisions, we need to get them free cash flow and we need to get them feeling good, feeling confident and comfortable to be able to make decisions from that place of abundance and be a really good leader within their business if they've got a team. So that'll be where I'm looking at is we're looking at what are the quick short-term wins that we can get here. Are there any really obvious things that just aren't working well that we can get rid of? Are there any expenses we can cut that shouldn't be there? Often, we find quite a lot there. Are there any outstanding invoices that aren't getting paid? And often, that's another thing that there's no system for following up outstanding invoices. So that's always another little quick win there. And then it's looking at, like, let's say this is an online business. We then go, well, what are your traffic sources, right? So where is traffic coming from? How does this traffic become a lead? How does this lead become a prospect? How do we define traffic, lead, prospect in that business? And when they're a prospect, how do we get them into a client? And then what is that flow there? And we just really clearly define that. And we really clearly define what do we need to do at each stage here. Based on the numbers, we can normally figure out which one of these is broken down the most. And we just fix one at a time.
Mate, you've got a wealth of knowledge. Your wealth of knowledge is really, really good. What's your? I know there's as a business owner, you got to obviously be cover all bases. What's your strengths as a business operator? Like if you were to put yourself in like a marketing or a sales or an operations, or like where's your strengths lie?
I've got a pretty good handle over dad jokes, but
I've heard a couple of them.
So that's always a win. I'm also colorblind, so a strength of mine is not picking out what to wear because colors don't clash to me. But when it comes to business, marketing is a massive strength of mine.
Yeah.
I really enjoy because marketing is just educating people how you can help them.
Yeah.
And it's building trust and it's building relationships. And so I really like building relationships with people. As you would see, I'm single now, so I've been on Tinder a bit lately, so building a lot of relationships.
What's your sales pitch on Tinder?
My sales pitch on Tinder, for all the potential matches out there. Sorry if you've had this one before, but hey, I really hate small talk on Tinder because I do. I hate the message back and forth. Why don't we go grab a coffee and see if we don't hate each other?
Mate, swift, sharp, straight to the point.
Yeah. So getting in a back and forth conversation is just, it's not fun. But back to that marketing, operations sort of falls into that because in order to be a good marketer, you need to understand structures, frameworks, systems. And then I guess on the people side of it, the culture, and then I guess numbers and finance. Like I'm relatively across all those things because that's what I help people with. But the main area that, if I could just do one of those things, it's marketing.
Yeah.
It's talking to potential clients. It's educating them how we can help them. And it's building trust and having them put their hand up and say, I want to work with you. I don't believe in hard, high pressure sales or anything like that.
Beautiful.
I think if someone leaves that call and they've been pressured into it, that they're not going to be a great long-term client. I'd rather say no to more people than we say yes to and have only the best people work with us.
If you were to give, and I like Alex Hormozi, how he says there's no such thing as golden bullets. Silver bullets, just a lot of golden BBs, just a lot of little things to improve.
Yes.
If you were to give some silver bullets for marketing for people that just want to increase their marketing, what's the 1, 2, 3 things that they can do to just have a good shift with their marketing for their business?
I think know really clearly what is your marketing funnel. Like, know every aspect of that. So know what are your traffic sources. How does someone become, go from being a traffic source to becoming a lead? For me, a lead is someone who's on my email database. How does someone go to being a prospect? That's someone who isn't a client yet. And so for a lot of people, that might be a prospect that jumps on a discovery call or a sales call. Now they're a prospect. And then how they become a client. And what are your numbers and percentages at each of those stages? And honestly, just have one. If you have more than one funnel for like an online coaching or consulting business, and you're less than 10 mil a year, then I think you're getting distracted. I would just have one solid funnel. You can have different like lead magnets or things within that funnel, but just have one funnel that you understand really well. And you know that if I turn the tap on at the top and I put more money in it, these numbers are going to be consistent throughout. And then you have that, then have predictable income. And I think predictable income is what a lot of online business owners don't have. They go $60,000 a month, and then $10,000 a month, and then $70,000 a month. And weirdly enough, only the big ones make it onto social media. But it's about how can you have consistent, recurring income, and how can you consistently predict those sales.
This is gold, man. This is really, really gold stuff. And for someone who's an online marketer, I really resonate with it. Like if I use Go High Level, I was going to ask if you've got any recommendations. That's what I use, but mine looks like a shit show. If you sign into it, I've got like all these leads and all these people, and they just haven't been followed up because I've been building the machine more so.
Yes.
But yeah, you probably have a heart attack if you saw my back end, just to be honest with you, mate. But I've got a question to sort of segment out of this, but it might come back into it. I'd love to hear for the guests I talk to, just what's going on inside their head. So, and obviously we're doing that now, but what is it that you think about a lot, but you don't talk about a lot, or you don't get the opportunity to talk about a lot?
I like this question. I think about a lot, but I don't get to talk about a lot. I do often think a lot about retention of clients, and how I believe that retention and sales are very, very closely linked. And that, like in an online business, I think someone chooses to exit, say, a coaching or consulting business when they can no longer see the path forwards being really, really clear. Something I've been thinking about a lot lately is, why does someone choose to leave a consulting business that they're working with when they're seeing a return on investment? And I do believe that it's that they can't see the path forwards, and it comes back to planning, in making sure that the clients you're working with have a clear plan for the next 3 months, 3 years, and then how essentially pitching that to them as sales. And sales is essentially expanding the problem. It's understanding where they are now, where they want to be, expanding that, making that larger, helping them to see that they can achieve more, and helping them to see how you can help them to achieve that. That's probably something I've been thinking about lately, but haven't really talked about. Just looking at different clients and different businesses.
Thank you for dropping some exclusive knowledge for me and the listeners, mate. Appreciate that. A couple or last question or two. What is it that obviously you've got a wealth of knowledge too? You've had great experience, but I would assume, and you've already dropped a couple of names, DeMartini, Lewis Mocker. I'd love to know who's had some really big shifts for you from a self-development aspect, from mentorship, books, programs, masterminds. Kerwin Ray was huge and monumental for me. What were some of the bigger shifts from a mentorship, coaching, self-education for you?
Quite a few, actually. My first ever mentor from the healthcare perspective was a guy called Shane Davis. And Shane taught me a lot about the value and the power of people, and the value in being an empathetic leader, and the value in being just the best listener in the room. And that he was my first mentor, and he really set me on my path forward. So incredible person, and just the way that he makes everyone feel like someone is just magical.
That's cool.
DeMartini, obviously, done a lot of his stuff online. Haven't done any in-person stuff with him yet, but I guess COVID was when I sort of delved into his world. Lewis Mocker, absolutely brilliant. Actually went on a School of Mastery event on a yacht with him recently, and can confirm he's exactly the same in person as he is on his stories. And
Fantastic.
great guy, bloody hilarious. Hopefully his ankle's doing better. Rolled his ankle. Then Tony Robbins is probably the other big one that I've done a lot of his stuff, and he talks a lot about wealth building as well as business building, and then I guess it's the personal mindset. I got an ice bath on the balcony out here that I love to jump in. I would like to say every day, but the past few weeks that it's not been every day. But yeah, that's been really instrumental. And then probably over the past year, one of the most instrumental things I've learned about was probably Nassim Taleb, if you've ever heard of him. So he wrote the book Fooled by Randomness, The Black Swan, and just understanding the role of luck in what we do and the survivorship bias, and how we really fool ourselves a lot into thinking that we're better, smarter, more clever than we are, and having a better understanding of how that plays into what we do as what I do as an online consultant, and I guess the blind spots that we might have because of it.
Man, beautiful. I've got a book question on top of that. Are you going to write a book first and foremost?
No.
Okay.
I'm not pulled to do it at all. Like I feel like if I was to write a book, it'd be so that I could say I was an author. That's a really shitty reason to write a book.
I love the honesty, man. No, and a lot of people do it for that reason, and that's the and it's they literally spend a couple months and whack it together just to put it out there to say they're an author, even though it hasn't sold or helped many people. So beautiful answer. In this question, then, you are an author, and you're writing one book, and it's the only piece of knowledge and wisdom you can pass on to your family, your friends, your loved ones in the world, and you can only leave 3 lessons in it. What are your 3 lessons?
3 lessons in the book. Probably the first lesson is that without health, you have nothing. So health should always be and people are going to laugh because I drink a lot of energy drinks and caffeine. But health is a high value of mine, and my cognitive dissonance allows me to believe that by being healthy in other areas, I make up for the caffeine intake. And I can find lots of studies that by cherry picking them that back up that I'll be fine.
I like the honesty with it, man. It's good. Very
so
there's one.
Love a good cherry pick on PubMed. That's one. Secondly, that money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys a solid foundation to build happiness on.
That's awesome. I like that one.
And then the third one would be that there is probably wealth again. The difference between wealth and status, and that everyone can be wealthy, but not everyone can be at the top of the status game. And really understanding, are you playing the wealth game or are you playing the status game? Are you buying things and doing things in order to move up the status game and having to essentially push other people down in order to do it? And that's it. It's a ladder that you'll never be happy on. Or are you building wealth, and are you using wealth to create freedom, which at the end of the day should, for most people, be the goal, is to use wealth to create time freedom and freedom within their own life.
Beautiful. I love the status analogy you were saying. I picture the mirage that you'll never arrive at. I'll be happy when, and then it's $1 million. Oh, no, it's not $1 million. Now it's 10 million. Now it's not 10, and now it's 100. And it's just that exhausting little hamster wheel that you think it's going to fill the void, but it never fills the void. So,
and it doesn't matter how good you think you are from a mindset perspective. And this guy comes from a guy called Naval Ravikant. But earlier this year, I bought a brand new Lamborghini, and no joke, 3 weeks later, I was like, wouldn't mind a McLaren because they've got the scissor doors, and like this stupidity of that, right? Of being like you think when I get this, I'm going to be so content, and it's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't. It just breeds the want of more, and it's still great. It's still good fun, but you really need to check yourself there, because I can guarantee no matter what that thing is that you'll be happy when. You'll get used to it within 2-3 weeks, and then you'll be looking at the next thing. And if that's, the foundation that your life is built on, then I just don't think you're going to be very happy.
Very exhausting way to live, right?
It is. And I've been there myself in my younger years too. So
Hey, what's ended with a vulnerable question, then
Mm.
we can plug where people can find you. What's something that you're working on from a personal level that the world doesn't get to see?
Working from a personal level that the world doesn't get to see. I'd probably say it's ensuring that I'm honest even when it's not in my best interest. I've got a really close friend. His name's Benji, and it's something I've always really admired about him is his ability to not ever tell a white lie, to just be honest, even when it's not in his best interest, even when it's going to hurt someone else's feelings. He's honest.
Yeah.
And I actually did a thing recently where, because I'd say I'm good like 99% of the time, but there were a few things that had happened over the past few years where I was like, like reflecting on it when I was journaling, that I hadn't been 100% honest there. And so I actually created a list and I gave everyone a call, and I was like, hey, when this happened, I said this, but that wasn't exactly what happened. It was this. And so I
Awesome, man.
contacted everyone who I felt I wasn't 100% honest with, and had those conversations. And that's my goal moving forwards, is to, even when it's not in my best interest, even when it's going to hurt someone else's feelings, it's how can I be 100% honest so that's in line with my values.
Any honesty you want to share right now that you haven't been honest about?
No, I've given everyone the buddy calls.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
good. It
Good.
worked really well. But yeah, it was all like an example was with Benji. We did a bit of a competition where we were investing to see who could make the most money from you doing on a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I was losing, so I actually just threw an extra 6,000, like chucked an extra $6,000 in the back door, essentially to get me back on track. And that was saying I hadn't told him. And then I gave him a call and was like, "Hey man, um, I cheated at this game that we played, and I still lost.
Yeah.
And I still lost. So there you go.
Love your honesty, man. I love the dynamic of the success that you have had, and also obviously the consciousness and the self development that you put together. Because I can find there's that spectrum of your sort of your successful monetary materialistic people who have the cars, the money, the wealth, but they're generally very unfulfilled, very exhausted, very burnt out. And then sometimes you've got your sort of spiritual gurus who are saging everywhere. They're wearing white robes and they're levitating, but they can't pay their rent. And it's beautiful. You've got a really good integration of the two, man. So it's been really
Thank you.
enjoyable. Mate, if anyone wants to connect with you for services, to connect, just have a chat, have some caffeine together, where can they find you?
Caffeine normally at ESPL, just on the road here. But if you want to connect with me, the only thing I really use is Instagram, and it's Peter Flynn. Don't message me on LinkedIn. It's the most painful platform on earth, and I have about 7 friends on Facebook, so don't contact me there either.
Beautiful, mate. Mate, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate the conversation.
No, thank you for having me, mate. It's been a pleasure.